Being alive is hectic, and that's why we need time for us, a place for honest conversation and real connection. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get stuck in. Today we have Nita joining us from Casa Kink, and we're going to have a conversation on polyamory and open relationships, which I think is going to be quite an interesting one. I know I'm very curious about it. To kick things off, I'm going to ask Nita to just introduce herself to you guys.
Thank you. I'm Nita. I work at Casa Kink, and we run poly events, kinky events, and other collective or community style events. And in addition to that, I work as a sexuality coach and counsellor. And the majority of the work that I do in that space is either relationship counselling for people who are looking to open up their relationships, heal the open relationships, or even people who are just looking at relationships more mindfully.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be amazing. To start our conversation, I wanted to ask you, what is the actual difference between an open relationship and polyamory? Because they sound like they're the same, but I don't think they are.
I think there's a lot of misconception in this space. So my definition is that open relationships are the umbrella, and underneath that you've got different types of open relationships. So for example, swinging is one of them, polyamory is one of them, monogamish is another, and there are a whole bunch of varieties of relationships that are open to some extent or another. Then polyamory is one of those subgroups.
Okay, and polyamory, is that where, I'm just picking up on what our conversation that we had before we started filming, is that where you would like select a partner and kind of date more than one person at the same time, so there's a little bit more of a level of commitment, or
So
what is it?
I think we seem to think that our spouse is the person we commit to, but we don't think about the fact that when we get a cat, we commit to our cat as well, or all of our houses, whatever. We commit to a lot of things. And so we don't need to commit to a partner to be polyamorous. We don't need to commit to multiple partners. And poly is actually about love. It's not about commitment. Poly means, or polyamorous means multiple loves.
Okay.
And really when we're parents to more than one child, we already have polyamory.
Okay.
It's not a foreign concept, really.
Okay, thank you. What do you think inspires people to consider opening their relationships?
Oh, so many things. I think for a lot of people it's about sex. It's about sexual adventure, it's about engaging in new sexual partners. For couples, very often it's about an other joining. Depending on the orientations will depend what that and other looks like. But I think for a lot of people it has this underpinning of sex. But once you get beyond that, it's as people are realizing that one person can't be all the things to you. And relationship anarchy has this great concept called the smorgasbord. And it basically is saying, and my husband loves to give this example, he doesn't like going to the theatre and he doesn't like musicals. But I had a partner who did both those things for me. And if I only had my husband, he would feel obligated to come along with me. Whereas he gets to say, that's not for me. And I get to say, well, it is for me. And here's a person who will do it with me. And it's not lessening, it's actually allowing each of us to be our own people.
I think that's such an interesting concept. I guess in my mind, as inviting as that sounds, I get a bit concerned at the complexity that it adds to your life by having another person in it. So I was talking to my boyfriend about this episode before we recorded together, and I was like, could you imagine there was like another person in our dynamic, just because I feel like I have so much on the go at the moment, like work, I've got a social circle, I've got a partner, and that's already like a whole other human being. And then I've got myself.
Yeah.
I love the ordering of that.
Yeah.
Okay, great priorities.
We won't comment.
Yeah. But I was like, I actually don't know if I would have the capacity. Do you think that it's is as daunting as I'm anticipating it to be? As in, like, is it as taxing as that, or not really?
I think number one, we need to accept relationships are hard.
Yeah.
They are hard. No matter how easy it is at one point, it's going to have another point where it's really hard. And now you're going to multiply that. One relationship becomes 2, 3, whatever. If each of you has got other partners, it's a lot of people in a circle. And it is hard. And I think the realization of that is how we find compassion for ourselves in it and go, this is hard. I think you've touched on the most critical point. There isn't a limit to how much we can love. There's a limit to how much energy, time, and resource we have available. And we have to be mindful. We have to relate consciously and go, have I got capacity for this? Not right now, no. Maybe never. And that's okay. I think we don't need to push ourselves to be anything or have any kind of relationship or orientation or anything like that. We are who we are at every point in time, and that changes.
Yeah. What do you think? So earlier we were discussing, I said to you, what do you think inspires people to open their relationships? And then you said sex is quite an underpinning one. I feel like sometimes it can also be dissatisfaction. It might be sex in a positive light, as in curiosity, and I have a fulfilling relationship, and now I'm curious about another person. Or it could be, I'm in a relationship, it's unfulfilling, and now I'm trying to find a way around this, maybe without addressing the truthful problem. Do you think that opening a relationship can ever be positive in terms of saving a dynamic?
No. Relationship, no matter how many relationships you have, each one has to be healthy in its own right. And just because you're in an unhealthy dynamic here, maybe, doesn't mean you can't have a healthy one here, but it's not going to fix this one. Each relationship needs to be dealt with as a unique entity that needs to find its healthy path. And you can't use other people to fix a broken dynamic.
I can only imagine us make it worse, to be honest.
The pressure, the stress, the inherent jealousy, and jealousy is a great topic to talk about. We all have it. It becomes a lot. You can't come in unhealthy and feeling insecure in your partner and then think you can do things that are going to make you feel even more insecure. You can't do that. It's not going to work.
So on that note, I wanted to ask you, do you think that there's a certain type of person or certain type of characteristics that can be attributed to a person that make them better attuned or more likely to be successful in this kind of open relationship or polyamory exploration?
Sure, I think they almost fall into skills rather than personal attributes, because we can learn how to, for example, be much better communicators. If you aren't a good communicator, you're not going to succeed. And that applies to any relationship, not just poly ones. And so being a strong communicator is critical, but it is a skill you can develop. I think being very introspective and reflective and being able to sit with your emotions, again, a skill you can learn. If you can't do that, you're not going to process your own feelings in order to engage with someone, your main partner, your nesting partner, whatever your thoughts are. You're not going to be equipped to deal with that. And I think a really open mind, like an open mind that is open to engage with all sorts of people in all sorts of ways, is going to make you a much better success story in the scene.
So you mentioned jealousy as well.
Yes.
How does one even begin to manage that?
So I think we begin with, if you're in a relationship and the fact that you're the only person in the relationship makes your jealousy go away, you need to sit with that as the person feeling the jealousy. Because jealousy isn't a bad emotion. It's just an indicator of a sign of something that we're not very comfortable with. And monogamous people are the most jealous people I know, because they've never had reason to sit with the complexity of that. Jealousy is just a feeling. It's a really awful one. It feels so horrible when you're sat in the middle, and it makes you feel anxiety and panic. But actually, if you sit with it, you'll often find, what is the fear that sits underneath that jealousy?
Yeah.
My fear is my partner's going to find someone better and go away. Well, that could have happened when there was only one partner. And I think when we start to process that nothing's changed because there are other partners, and when we get over comparison, because comparison leads us to jealousy. Oh, that partner's always available for dates whenever I've got kids. That partner's got money to go out to dinner all the time. I'm always home. You know, those are they're the little resentments that build. And again, I'm using a different word from jealousy. Those are the things that sit under our jealousy. We just got to sit with it and examine it and feel it.
I feel like one of the things that, look, I don't know if I'd ever do it. I don't know if I have it in me, but when I play pretend in my imagination and I think maybe one day I could conceive of being in an open relationship, that there's something I find attractive in having to confront that jealous aspect of yourself and you have to really expand as a human being to be able to hold, as you said, all of your own emotions, but also to manage. I think that's like probably one of the hardest things to do, is to like sit with and manage your own emotions, even in a relationship with like one partner.
Absolutely.
You often just want to throw it at them, right?
Yeah.
And now you have to kind of be like the ultimate grown-up. So I think from the perspective of exercising those skills, I'm like, that could be cool, but it seems like a lot of cognitive and emotional work, I won't lie.
It absolutely is. And I keep using the word mindful and conscious. You know, it's about going, what do I want? What do I need? I was listening to your boundaries episode, and that examination of, what do I need? Never mind anyone else around me. What do I need? It's very empowering. And it does leave you feeling a little more enlightened than before you started. I think poly people have a bit of a tendency to be a bit smug about it. We've done the work, even if we're not perfect. And it is, because that work doesn't come easy.
No, it's not. And it's not just theoretical work, it's you're putting it into practice. It's not like, I'm working through my jealousy and then I had a random moment of jealousy with a colleague. It's like the most intimate, confronting version of jealousy.
Yes.
And probably can bring out the worst and the best in people.
Absolutely.
I would imagine.
It does. It brings out defensiveness. It's your fault. Blaming.
So if someone was listening to this and they were curious about how to begin a conversation of opening a relationship or how to explore this further, how would you coach them, or what would you say to them are some of the steps they can take?
So I think, firstly, there is a difference between the opening a relationship, an existing relationship that's got a very specific set of processes it kind of can go through to help that ease, and being a person who's now consciously choosing to relate differently to the world. The number one thing I say to couples who are opening, detach from each other. Not emotionally, not in terms of your relationship, but you know how every day you do everything together except to go to work? Stop doing that. Find your own friends. Go out separately from your friends. Because once you've reached that point where we aren't a single thing, we are two humans, the ability to take the step towards now engaging as just me in another relationship exists. Otherwise, you come into another relationship dragging your other partner along, and you need to detach from them. And I think, so for couples opening up, that's the number one thing I always start with, is just start by feeling like individuals in your relationship again. And then the next, for them, it's step 2. For everyone else, it's step 1. Go find your poly people. Have a look and find workshops, talks, munches. Munches are like social gatherings. They were called that because we used to eat at them.
Okay.
Optional now.
I thought you were going to say because you used to eat each other out.
Later. Afterwards.
Okay.
And start talking to other people. It's not to go hook up. It's to go talk to people. How did you do that? How did that feel for you? And I think the really great thing is when you meet poly people, they're very willing to talk about how hard it is, where it's hard, what they've needed to do, and all the great things that come along with it. I'm using poly folk like we're all the same, which clearly not the case, but largely there is just such a welcoming of new people into poly circles, in part to like help other people see what our life is like, and it's not that different. But I sometimes cynically think, well, because the poly circles are quite small and they're very incestuous, everybody has dated everybody else. And at some point we need fresh blood, you know.
So
That sounds so
that's your
cynical.
cue. Sign up. That's hysterical. So what are some of the red flags that someone might not actually be ready for this?
So if we start with the couples again, my number one red flag, couples that come to me and go, we want a third.
Yeah.
Like we are one thing, we want one other thing.
They want a pet.
We want a pet.
Yeah.
Very often they're coming from a perspective of a toy, a sexual toy. And that's unethical. We don't treat humans like that. It's not nice. On the other hand, there are places to treat people like that. Like if you go into swinging heaven, everyone is swingers, they're all there for sex and nothing else. Go for it. Be blunt about what you're looking for. The other one is what's called a one penis policy, where, for example, a couple are allowed to bring other people in, but only one penis is allowed in the group, and normally it's the man from the hetero couple, and she can date all the women she likes, but she is not allowed another penis in her life. That is very red flag. I personally have a red flag around something called don't ask, don't tell. Some couples find the jealousy and the hard work a little overwhelming. And so they have an agreement, I won't ask, you don't tell me what you did. In some of them it might be, she goes on a date, he knows she's going on a date, but he don't want to know anymore. Whether that was just dinner or what it led to, he doesn't want to know. So don't ask, don't tell. Very often people who are claiming to be in don't ask, don't tell relationships, well, firstly, they're not doing the work. So there's a fair chance that's going to be unhealthy very soon. But there is also, it's very common for people who are actually cheating to claim don't ask, don't tell. So their partner doesn't know at all that they are practicing an open relationship, but the relationship isn't open. So they tell everyone, don't ask, don't tell. But they're often cheating.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would have thought that that's actually such an interesting red flag, because you kind of almost think that that would be one way of navigating it, that is an option.
It is.
It is an option. And does it work for some people? Or is it largely, it's not the best route?
I find the human imagination is our worst enemy. And so when I don't know something, just use myself, what my imagination can turn that into is so much worse than whatever it actually was. And we really are our own worst enemies in that space. And so not knowing is actually making it worse for you in almost every instance. And it's actually putting a big wedge between the partner who is now not allowed to share a part of themselves with you. So it just, in my opinion, is not the healthiest way to do things. But every relationship needs to be formed on its own basis, on its own, on the boundaries of those two people. Thruples, which, you know, I don't know if you saw the You, Me, Her show. It was on Netflix, where this perfect little thruple appears, you know. They're rare, and they take a lot of work, because it takes three people who all like each other enough to be emotionally, romantically, and lovingly connected to each other. how hard is it to find just one person
Yeah.
with connecting to? Never mind where all of us agree they do exist, and some beautiful throuple relationships out there. Yeah.
I find that interesting. So I have two questions. Maybe I'll ask it, just going back to the don't ask, don't tell. So what would be an example, if in your case, how much information are you sharing? So I've gone on a date with my other partner, and then I come home and I say to Aaron, we went on a date, we went to Puccini's, we had pasta, I gave them head. Like what, is it to that degree?
Every relationship is different, and even the individuals within a relationship can be different. So, for example, one partner might go out and give all of that information when they come back, because the person they were on a date with understands that all that information is going back to your other partner. Because we need to think about the consent of the other people we're in a relationship with. Are they okay with your other partner knowing that you gave head?
Yeah.
You know, we need to think about those things. And so some people will they will say right at the beginning of an engagement with someone new, by the way, this partner of mine and I have a completely open relationship in terms of what we tell each other. How do you feel about me, keeping them thoroughly informed on what we're doing? Where are the boundaries for you? And so that's your ideal. Clearly, we don't all do that all the time. Again, my personal, I don't go into the details of positions, actions. I will say, we had a great date. He gave me a spanking. We had sex.
Okay.
Done.
Okay.
Nobody needs to know more than that.
Yes. Okay. Fair. But obviously disclosing the intimacy of your engagement.
For sure,
Okay.
because I'm unprotected with my husband, and so the STI challenges that relate to having multiple relationships are all engaged. For us, we have an agreement that on that basis, if no other, we have the right to know each other's engagement, sexual engagement specifically.
And then the other question I wanted to ask you was about the throuple situation.
Yeah.
So the throuple is 3 people. I would imagine it generally starts with 2 people that then find a third person, and then it becomes a relationship of 3 people in which, in theory, they're all equals. It's not like you're all equally involved and invested or whatever it is. In a situation like that, if one of the partners lost interest, I'm just curious to understand.
Yeah.
Do we all? Is it a democracy? Do you know what I mean?
So these are some of the complexities.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in reality, you are 3 individuals in a relationship. One of them no longer is attracted to one of them. There is, in theory, if everyone's happy, no reason one relationship can't stay in place. That relationship on the triangle is also in place, but the connector between them is not. Those are most commonly called V's. So it's 3 people are involved, but these 2 don't have a relationship with each other. And those are very common, but that closes the triangle where everybody's related to everybody, that can fall apart. And for some people, especially when it is a couple who open up and bring a third into that, when the relationship breaks up, it's that third that gets discarded. And that's where we get into the unethical side of things that can happen in the way certain people are treated in those dynamics. And veto, it brings to veto. So veto is some couples will have the ability to say, don't want you dating that person. I'm vetoing that relationship. If couples have veto rights on each other, anybody else that is in relation with them doesn't actually have rights, because the other partner can just end the relationship. And so these are ways that, like, the complexities need to be navigated and agreed.
It sounds quite wild. That sounds like the Wild West a little bit.
It does, and yet it's absolutely nothing like that.
Yeah.
It's so calm, and I'm not saying it's always calm, tempers flare and fights happen, and it's relationships. But it's not as Wild West as it sounds out there. Although I imagine it can be.
I would imagine. I mean,
It could be.
definitely. So I was thinking about this leading up to our episode together, and I know that Casa Kink is a queer haven as well, and that you celebrate queerness. So I guess when I was thinking, okay, so we're opening up a relationship or whatever it is, like even if we a throuple or polyamorous or whatever those different things mean, what is, in your opinion or from what you've seen, more common? Is it more common for queer people to be curious and like share their love amongst many different partners versus heterosexual couple or people?
I think it's it obviously depends on which letter of that alphabet you belong to, but very often the queer as an umbrella, they are often people who are exploring gender or orientation in a way that means the norm doesn't exist. And so there is a huge overlap between poly and queer people. So for example, I'm bisexual, so now I have a straight-ish husband, and but I'm attracted to women as well. And so because that's broader, being in an open relationship allows me access to experience being heterosexual or being with a man, as well as being with a woman, as well as being with anyone who identifies as any other gender. And so the overlaps are big, especially if you're flexible on gender that you engage with. You're more likely to be exploring them.
And then, yeah, I find this so interesting because I guess if you're a heterosexual couple and then you embark on opening a relationship, I would imagine that it brings into question like a conversation around your sexual orientation and what that means.
Yes.
Because, and also earlier you mentioned this like one dick rule.
Yeah.
I find that so interesting. Aaron and I have spoken, it's actually quite funny. He's been like, in the past he said to me, you know, I'm very content if you want to explore being with another woman or whatever it is. And I don't think necessarily he meant it as a one dick thing, but it was more the fact that we're in a, you know, monogamous relationship, but if you ever felt curious to explore that, I will hold space for that and I don't need to be involved.
Yeah.
It can just be with you and another woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, right? Then I think maybe I started like really stewing on it and I thought, okay, what does this mean actually? Because if it's not a case in which me being with another woman is being fetishized and being like, oh, be with another woman, then it means, and if we're equal partners, then it means that you could be with another man if you wanted to, by the same measure, right? The same rules apply.
Or another woman.
Or another woman, but yeah, if I can't be with another man and it's like you can be with another woman, then you can be with another man if you wanted to. Yeah. And I had this whole like, it took me a long time to wrap my head around it. I was like, that could never happen. I was like, appalling, never. And then I was like, but maybe like, what if Aaron had to come to me and say, well, listen, I know that I said this to you and I would just like to, and I was like, thank you so much, I respect that, how beautiful for two women to be together, you know? Yeah. And then he was like, okay, well, I'd like to explore this. And if I was like, no, this is heinous, it can't happen. And then eventually I digested it enough and I said to him, I mean, not that he's even approached this with me, so I'm not saying my boyfriend is like curious in this way. But if he was, I said to him, you know, like, you should just tell me. And let me know if this is something you'd like to explore. So I'm just interested to hear from your perspective in working with couples that are opening their relationships, what conversations come up around the sexual orientation thing? And is it confronting? Do people have epiphanies about who they are?
Absolutely. I think some of it will start, as an example, with mass people with penises, having a curiosity around their bum. So it starts there, and in South Africa especially, we've been socialized to believe that men who like their asses played with are a little bit gay, which, you know, quite clearly is not the case. You can be perfectly straight and enjoy anal play.
Yeah.
In fact,
You should.
That's
We
where
recommend.
your G-spot is. Go for it, guys, please.
Yeah, please.
And a lot of it is just our own homophobic thinking, actually. And we can even be homophobic about ourselves. Like, oh, no, it doesn't matter if I date a woman. She's just a woman. It's not like dating a man. Might be one of them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very interesting
Yeah.
because, and it's the way society socialized us. So to come back to the question, the first question it raises is like, where do I find my pleasure? Oh God, it's my pleasure buttons in my bum. Shit. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that starts to raise the questions of orientation. But it also raises questions of gender. Eventually down the road, people will start to explore what gender really means. Because when you are polyamorous and you think you're bisexual, what happens when you encounter a trans person or a non-binary person? Are you attracted to them? Oh, you're pansexual. Look at that, you're not bi at all. And so we do end up in like queries around gender and orientation are very deeply rooted. And for myself, I feel like we almost started talking about pleasure in serious terms once we started talking about having it with other people. It was like it bubbled this conversation to the surface.
What do you mean by pleasure in serious terms?
So I had been married monogamously for 18 years when we opened our relationship. And we had a great sex life. But I don't think we'd ever talked about where our greatest pleasures came from. When you touch me like this, when you whisper just like that, we just did it. The moment we opened the pleasure conversation, like the potential for pleasure exploded.
So opening your relationship improved your sex life with your husband, you would say?
It definitely did in the beginning, and then I think the emotions get complicated and you can be very weighed down in that period. Yeah.
The emotions get complicated.
Because poly's hard.
Yeah.
So depending like what's going on in your various cycles, I think every relationship, poly or not, hits that point where it's really hard.
So if someone was in a poly relationship or an open relationship or a throuple, I don't know how to...
Open, all the versions of open.
All the versions of open. What are some of the most important boundaries that couples need to set?
Okay. I think number one, couples don't set boundaries, individuals do.
Okay.
We set boundaries for ourselves. The number one is sexual health, because the minute you're engaging in more people, your risks, they go up. So my boundaries are, I engage with people who engage in safe sex. My boundary with my husband is that we don't have protected sex, but it's on the understanding that he would have protected sex with other people. And on the rare occasion that these things don't work out the way we intended, we have a plan that walks us through it. I think one of the things that often get confused with boundaries is rules. So you'll speak to some couples who will say, our rule is protected sex with everyone else. Okay, what are the consequences when that gets broken? Because there are no rules, just ask kids, that cannot be broken. They will be broken. So rather go with an agreement, like this is how we will work. I want us to be unprotected. I want you to be protected with other people, and I agree to be protected, but oopsie. Okay, we have our action plan. We will now be protected between us until a period has passed and I go for my tests and I get my results and then we move forward again. So I think boundaries around sexual health are probably, just because it's about our health, so important. Preach what I don't practice. I think people should set an agreement between them to have a regular review. There's a great crowd called Polyamory, and all they talk about is various forms of open relationships and the tools to do it. And they've got a fabulous tool, now I'm remembering no, it's not coming. But it walks you through the things that you and each of your partners should be having as regular review conversations. Oh, this is what I've been up to lately. These are the explorations I've had. Oh, I'm seeing this person I really like. Because in everyday life, these conversations don't always happen. We think we communicated this, and we half communicated that while they were reading the newspaper, and messages get lost. And so I think a relationship boundary is to say, we do this. When we don't do this, how do we overcome that? And I think if we take all our previously perceived rules, like a one penis policy is a rule, and we go, no, the boundary, my boundary is this. What am I going to do when my boundary is disrespected? Yeah. That's a much healthier way of approaching it.
Do you think that there should be any standout, or are there any standout emotional boundaries that you think should or benefit this kind of dynamic?
That is a really good and interesting question. I don't know if it's necessarily emotional boundaries, but it's about honoring each of those people as humans, not sex toys, and honoring that relationship in at least the way we would honor a friendship.
Okay, so I suppose you just gotta burn your fingers, guys. Go learn the hard way. So I suppose you have to, though.
You do, but there is a lot of like reading and research material that I strongly recommend. There's a great book called Designing Relationships, or Designer Relationships. And it literally talks you through the ways you can create a relationship that suits you. And what's lovely is it's not a poly book.
Okay.
It's a, how do I consciously want to choose the way I relate to other people? If you do choose the poly route, there's so many out there. One of them that's great is the Good Girl's Guide to Polyamory, which is great for women in particular, obviously. But there's like quite a lot out there. Get onto YouTube. There are speakers like Esther Perel, who isn't a poly person, but talks so well to what the realities are of relationships.
I love her.
What is cheating, or is this polyamory? People like Dan Savage, and their great talks where Esther Perel and Dan Savage talk together about polyamory. Do your research, turn into a great nerd. Oh, and the overlap between poly and nerd is like full circle. There is a bit of like, go out there and just burn your fingers.
Yeah.
My advice is go slowly. Slowly, slowly, slowly. If you are in a couple, go at the pace of the slowest person. Slowest person, don't hold that process up unnecessarily. So you need to have a good relationship to manage that. And just go slowly. Like, I've been investigating this concept called slow burn relationships recently. And I think that's how we burn our fingers less, is we don't just jump into the deep end. We actually check out where the rocks are and how high that is. We make sure our ears aren't going to burst when we hit the water. We do our homework first.
Do you think that, this is, maybe you don't know the information behind this, but I'm curious to understand, do you think that having open relationships are, in terms of just like maybe swinging or whatever it is, more successful than having a throuple? Like, are thruples successful?
They can be.
I'm just wondering because
they absolutely can be, and I know a few that are like really, relationships aren't easy, we'll say that again, but where they've really managed to respect and honor each other as individuals, and somehow they all love each other. That it wasn't planned to go get a situation where they all love each other. It happened. And so I think those thruples are the most successful ones. And they absolutely can work. The throuple situation comes down to consent and treating everyone like an equal partner.
Yeah, because I would imagine that with something like a throuple, it just has a feeling of more permanence to it than maybe what being in an open relationship and just exploring with other people might. So that's why I was kind of curious to see, or just to pick your brain on that.
I think it's because the throuple falls into the poly thing, and the poly is different from not all the others, but many other versions of open relationships. Solo poly and relationship anarchy being the others that sort of stand out as mindfully chosen.
What is relationship anarchy?
So relationship anarchy is like just throwing out the societal script that says women make babies, men earn the living, because there are only two genders, you know, and it's being able to say, I, as an individual, I am seeking comfort, caring, companionship, blah, 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 and then choosing where I find those things from. Sometimes we find so many of our emotional needs filled by friendships, and that overlap between queer and open relationship is because queer people have got this great concept of the queer platonic relationship. We are not necessarily sexual, we might be, but there's no romantic relationship between us. We're friends. But we're friends who honor that this is a real relationship, just as valid as the relationship I have with my husband. Yeah, I just think there's something really beautiful in that. And so the relationship anarchy has got all these blocks, and you go with each of your partners, and you go, which of these blocks are we filling for each other? Where are we? And where are we? Oh wait, I've got blocks that need filling somewhere else. Oh, I have a friend I do that block with.
Okay.
So it's very much along the lines of that designer relationships book, where you literally, you create what works for the two of you.
Yeah. And then all for yourself, it sounds like
for
you
yourself,
cultivate
and then with
things
each
from,
of your
each of the individual people. Okay, so I'm gonna have like 4 more questions for you.
Okay.
I know, and because I have 2 I'm gonna ask on here, and then I have the 2 from like our listeners that sent us some questions, which are quite exciting. So, how do you recommend people deal with societal judgment and the like of that?
It's a heavy one, that one. And there is something about polyamory that is like, people cannot see it as anything but cheating. You have to be very clear on your personal boundaries and how you want to present to the world. Some people, for example, are teachers, doctors. For them to express their polyamory, for example, is a lot like showing that they're sluts. And if you are a teacher, that's perverted and unacceptable, you know. And so for some people, like, circumventing societal expectation is almost impossible because of the nature of the work that they do. But I think a lot of it comes down to, who are you? How do you want to present to the world? Because we don't always want everybody to know all our things. But I think the thing we always need to consider in weighing all of this up is, how do each of our partners feel? If I'm pretending I'm monogamous, how does my other partner feel about never being recognized with my family, never getting invited to my work dinner, never being my person publicly? And that can be very soul-destroying for the other person, the person who's treated as though they don't exist in that role.
They're almost being treated like a mistress.
Exactly,
or like
exactly.
Some secret.
And I do understand it's not easy. I mean, I've watched so many friends and people I know open up about the fact that they're in an open relationship and be very discarded by it. I was told that in his day, people just cheated and kept this stuff private, and why can my husband and I not just keep this to ourselves? And I was like, I don't want to be part of a cheating society. I don't want to be part of a society that's lying. And so you've got to question yourself. When you feel confident in your convictions, it's a lot easier to stand up to society. And that happens a lot faster when you find your people. the people who are poly like you, or open like you, or kinky like you, whatever it is, when you find those people not for hookup purposes, but for the purposes of meeting people who get it, you will start to feel stronger, to feel more capable of making a real choice for yourself. No one can tell you you have to be open. We all have reasons we might not be. But
when you say open, you mean
open about
sharing.
Open about the fact that you're open.
Open about being open.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing I have for you is a question from someone that submitted it in, and it's not actually. I'll start with the one that's related to openness in relationships. Someone wanted to know what the impact is on, so if you're in a committed relationship, you have a committed partner. I'm not sure how far down the line they've gone in exploring having a threesome, but the question is around a threesome.
Okay.
They said, or they wanted to understand, does inviting a third person into your relationship with a committed partner and having a threesome, which I'm assuming is a encapsulated sexual experience, how does that shift your relationship with your committed partner, and can it have like an irreparable damage? Because I guess that also would be my scare. I'd also be scared of that.
Okay, I think you have the potential to be opening your relationship up to something super exciting. The thrill that a couple experiences playing, no relationship, no emotions, nothing complicated, playing with someone else, is off the charts. Like, seriously, you'll be horny forever. Not forever, but at least a month. From one experience, because it is so...
Yeah.
I was never allowed to experience shit like that. I never thought I could. Oh my living God.
Yeah.
When you first experience that experience, it is so thrilling. And I don't think if you're looking at it as a singular experience, and that singular experience could be repeated over years, like nothing to say it can't be, but it's play. That falls into the land of swinging. And if you're very clear, and everyone's very clear, there's no emotions involved in this, oh my God, what fun. You need to consider your insecurities before you engage in any kind of swinging type scenario. Because if you are, for example, in a heterosexual couple and another man is brought in, and you have feelings of inadequacy around the size of your penis, your sexual prowess, whatever it is, it can damage your relationship because your insecurity is driving that, not something that happened. And I really encourage people to stop and think about, like, it's the most fun you can imagine. If that's your thing.
Oh my word.
If that's your thing.
I'm gonna go home and have a threesome. I'm getting me excited.
Fuck yeah. Because it is entirely different to experience sex with two people.
Yeah.
Two people you're giving pleasure to, two people who are giving pleasure to you. I think more than three can become problematic because someone can be left out. That can start doing some hardcore damage. Someone becomes a little...
You don't want it to be you.
What did he call it? Coculated or diculated. Someone said to me, oh, my partner gets totally diculated. I was like, what's that mean? He goes, obsessed with the dick. I was like, okay. So if you're with a partner and you have some insecurities and your partner becomes obsessed with the other person, just during the play, that inadequacy steps in. So you need to feel confident. Don't engage in things that you already feel nervous about.
Possibly also, to your point earlier, have some kind of agreement in place where you can say, listen, we're in a committed partnership, so that means that if I am feeling like I want to stop, then I say we stop, we stop.
Absolutely. I strongly recommend using safe words, the same ones we use in kink. Red means stop, everybody stops. Not two people carry on and I'm now sat feeling left out. If I call red, everybody stops. Orange is a check-in, like where we at.
Okay.
And I think it is really important. And it's respect for everybody involved on the bed, assuming it's a bed.
Next question is also from a listener, and they wanted to know how to navigate, this is a little bit off of the open relationship or openness conversation and more around the kink aspect that you are so well acquainted with. If someone wanted to maybe invite more kinkiness into their relationship and they already had an understanding of what it is that the role that they wanted to play in that dynamic of dom and sub, and their partner is maybe not like,
not dominant,
yes,
or not submissive,
yes, exactly.
They don't meet the need.
Yes, they don't meet the need. How could you approach that? Is that like, if someone is not naturally dominating, for example, and you wanted them to dominate you, is there a way that you could encourage that out of them? Is it something that, as you said, is it a skill that someone could learn?
It's absolutely skills, but there is a personality aspect to dominance or submission. Like, what drives us to each of those things is different. I'll touch on submissives, for example. Quite a lot of submissives are incredibly strong women in control of their lives. And all they fucking want is to let go a little bit. So your problem is, if you're wanting to let go and your partner very specifically does not want to pick up the reins, you cannot make them. Like, that is their consent, they're saying no. Then you need to look at how else can I engage that experience. And I would encourage people to consider online play, especially if they're submissive, actually either side. So you can engage with a stranger, or not stranger, you get to know them obviously, online. And so that would be one way of opening very gently. But like, have the conversations and go to a workshop.
Okay.
Go to a workshop that is at the most basic level got something to do with doms and subs. Okay. You'll meet other doms and subs, and it's not for hookup. It's to go, how did you get into it? My husband, for example, flat refused to spank me. He was like, I don't hit women, I was taught not to hit women. It's too much. And he was like, but I can really see how you're liking this thing, and I want to also give it to you. And we sat down one night, he'd found some porno half teach you how to spank thing.
Yeah, okay.
It was so funny. And we sat and we watched and you can spank like this, and you can spank like that. And he was like, oh, okay. I was like, so you're going to try it? And he was like, okay, right. And he spanked me a little bit, and I was like, turned around, I was like, what did you think? And he was like, I was like, there you go, dominant maid.
Yeah.
You need to explore and play together. And the other thing I recommend, and this relates as much to the threesome as to this, is play in ways that don't have anything to do with pain or things that feel intimidating. So if it's the threesome, you and your partner, imagine that person with you, have sex talking about they doing this, they doing that, I'm busy doing this while so you're talking dirty and you're making that fantasy so real that they're able to step into the space where you want them. Or in the dom sub, find porn, guys. Porn is everywhere, and there's really good ethical porn on the BDSM side that isn't exploitative at all, and it also shows consent very clearly. Watch some porn. It may help them realize that dom sub isn't all about pain.
Yeah.
It's about very subtle controls. I really would recommend they come or go anywhere for a workshop, because you're going to meet the people.
Yeah. And as you said, build that community. I feel like it's such a psychological thing as well. I think that's probably the main driving force behind.
It's what keeps me going. If you turn on my brain, my body follows.
Yeah.
And a lot of kink is about that.
Okay, Nita, we're about to wrap up our episode together. But yeah, I suppose my last question was going to be, if anyone's listening and they're curious about opening their relationship, just going back to our original topic, or polyamory, what do you think is the first gentle step that they can take or should take?
Conversations. And there is a podcast called Polyamory. They've been running for 10 years probably. They were a throuple, And so it's really dynamic to see how these people post the throuple are still friends, but they've got tools. It's not just people talking about being polyamorous. It's about actually, here's a tool. Have you used this tool for that? Have you thought about it this way? And their insights are phenomenal. Read the books. Start there, meet people, not for hookup, but for understanding.
Okay.
And then use the dating apps. Poly people are out in the open now. We are showing that we are in a relationship and looking for more. Go for it.
The world's your oyster.
Absolutely. Like, this is an incredible time to be exploring any form of sexuality, actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
That. Yeah, it's been really fun. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nita. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to follow us on whatever platform that you're listening to this on, if it's YouTube, if it's Spotify. Keep engaged on Instagram. Let me know what you guys want to hear. We are so excited about this season 3 of Time for Us. We have many more incredible guests lined up. So thank you for listening. Love you always. Bye.